I'm going to share my screen. Second. Can you see my screen? Just leave a message in the chat. Also, if you have any questions, you can leave a message in the chat and hopefully I see them and, I answer them while we teach or while we learn because we're all learning here. Okay, perfect. I believe you all are at least familiar with Figma to an extent. And Figma recently made some updates, so I will try to teach based on this new updates. Okay, so icons. How do you find icons in Figma? It's very easy. So the first thing I would like you to do if your Figma is still very fresh is that you can go to the community, right? So you click on home, you click on community, and just search for icons, right? And you can see there are like over 99 files for icons. So people have created different types of icons. You can just click into any one and duplicate. So for example, let's say I like this one. You can click into it. Oh, it's now called get a copy and not duplicate. Okay. So get a copy and it creates one for you. And yeah, you can see what's up, go through the pages, check an icon you like. For example, you like this, you just copy and paste into your designs. And that's it, right? So that's one way of getting icons. Just look for a file you like on the community and you would see a whole lot. Just make sure to take icons that have you take icons from files that have quite a lot of them so that you're not having icons from different places. I would explain what I mean in a bit. So aside from the files, you can also get in plugins, right? So I changed this from icons to icon because I noticed plugins was showing 0. So yeah, you can see there are a whole lot of icon plugins. I haven't used this before. Icon doc and icons, Iconify, a whole lot, which you can just install and start using. So I'm gonna install one of them. I already have this installed, so I don't know why it's showing this. 1 second. Iconify, okay. So yeah, with Iconify, the reason why I like Iconify is because sorry, I'm just trying to keep up with the chat and everything. The reason why I like Iconify is because it has a lot of icons, like icon family. Now, the thing with icons is your icons have to be uniform. They need to look the same way in all the designs, right? So if you get, for example, let's come into material design and just take something from there. Let me say search or something more obvious, user wire profile. Come on, give me something. I'm trying to look for Okay, let me just use something like this. You can import as a component, it doesn't matter. Depends on what you want to use it for. Now you can see this one has some like a very thick borders. But if I take the same home icon from a different place, say for example, I think this one looks less thick. Nothing found. Okay, let me search from here. Yeah, this one has less thickness. This one has a different style compared to the previous one I showed you. So let me just import them so you can see the differences properly. So close. Let me take this down to 24. I'm just trying to explain something so you don't make the mistake. I see people do this a lot, right? So one thing you'll notice is this is way thicker than this, and this is from material symbol, and this is from clarity. This is from, I don't know what this is called, CIL, right? So if you use icons for material symbol, and then you pick your search icon, for example, from CIL, it's going to look inconsistent, right? So you have to make sure that your icons are from the same family, or even if they're not from the same family, they need to look very, very similar to each other, right? So say, for example, you're looking for a search icon and your icons have been from Clarity all the while, and you need a search icon. You have to, you know, look for something similar to Clarity, right? Like a similar thickness or just something that works but doesn't look too different from it. Um, Off the top of my head, okay, this is a bit more thicker than material. Let's see if this one works. I think it's thicker than this. Yeah, so if I was to get a search icon, and I assume Clarity doesn't have, for example, like it happens all the time, this search icon works because the thickness is somewhat similar, right? So it would be difficult to spot. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that about icons. So where to find icons? We've mentioned plugins, we've mentioned files. Another way you can find icons, it's online. So for example, Fonts Awesome or like Feather Icons. But the good thing about these websites is that they have plugins in Figma as well. So you don't need to leave Figma because you have a ton of options for icons. So let's go into buttons. I'll come back to icons. How do you create your buttons? And yeah, we have this. This was recently released, I think 2 or 3 days ago, because normally if you want to get your plugins, you right click and plugins, and then you can see your plugins, or you press Control/, and then you can search for anything. This is like a global search. Iconify, or come into the widgets menu. You can search your components, your plugins, and widgets. Right, this was recently released. So buttons, how do you create buttons? Buttons are like the major call to action, or we call them CTA on most design pages, right? So back in the days, if I was to create a button, I would draw like a rectangle, then I would type in a text, what's button, and then I would put it into the rectangle, and then I would group them together, and I have my button. But these days, Figma makes buttons much more easy to create. Why is this not suitable, or why is this not scalable, right? So say for example, I have a design and I have used this button in 10 places, right? I've used this button in 10 places. And then my manager comes to me, or my client says, um, I like the button, but I would prefer if it was green. What do I have to do? I have to come here, click green, come here, click green. Of course, right now you might say, why can't you just, select all and click green? But in a real life scenario, you wouldn't have all your buttons close to each other like this. They're in different parts of the design, right? So you have to go one by one to click and change the color. And that is not scalable, right? And say, for example, you want to change something, right? So let's say, okay, we don't want the label to be button. We want the label to be try it now for free. So you do try it now for free. And then you'd have to adjust. Imagine doing this for like 20 buttons or 30 buttons. It's going to be a huge pain. So, what's the best way to create a button? The way I would go about it, people might have different methods, but the way I would go about it is I would just put in my text, right? And click Shift A. Shift A basically means apply auto layout, or you can right click and add auto layout. And auto layout automatically puts a frame around whatever element you select, right? So right now we have a frame around it. Just for more visibility, I'm going to give it a fill. So let's go with orange. No, I used orange in the last cohort, so let's go with yellow. And I will talk a bit about auto layout, right? Just a little bit. Now we have the auto layout selected. How do I know it's auto layout? If you look at the layers panel, you have this 3-line icon. It means it has auto layout in it. And you have the auto layout panel in the right-hand section. What does this mean? This means spacing between items, right? So if I have an icon, say I have, let's assume this is my icon, right? And I put it into the auto layout. It means if I select the parent frame, see this as a parent frame. So frame 1 is a parent frame. I'll call it a parent frame just for better explanation. And these are the children, right? So this is the parent, these are the children. Parent and children. So I select the parent, and then the menu is back. So if I increase this, it increases the space between the elements in the auto layout, right? So if I had more, maybe I had more icons for some reasons, the space in between each of them, it makes it equal, right? That is what that does. Going back to the parent frame, this basically shows the horizontal padding. Now, what is padding? Padding is basically the space around an element, but inside the parent, right? So we have try it now for free. padding is this space inside the breathing room. How much room does it have to breathe, right? So if I increase this, it decreases the space in here and here, right? So you can see already it's telling me it's 4. I can reduce, I can increase, I can do the same thing here, or I can hold Alt and it increases on both sides, or you can just come here and put in what you want, right? And this, I'm sure you already guessed, is for the top and bottom padding. Perfect, right? What else can we check in the parent frame? We have this. So what this means is, how do you want your items to align? You want it to align to the left, to the center, to the right bottom, whatever. It's pretty straightforward here. So this wouldn't really change much because of how we've done the auto layout. But if you have um, more items in it, then you can play around with this, right? And if you take a look at the box, it's trying to align itself. It's a very subtle change, but you would see it. So right now it's aligned to the center and the right. If I take it top right, top left, I mean bottom left, but you wouldn't see much with this part, especially the bottom left, because it's already on the left hand side. What else can we check in this auto layout? So yeah, you might decide you want to, put 16 on the left, 30 on the right, 20 on the top, 45 on the bottom. You can just do that by clicking here, and it gives you the options. So what else can we see in the auto layout frame? I've not forgotten about buttons. One more thing you can see is this. So there's a spacing mode. This already shows a preview, so you know what it does, right? So space between makes sure that the elements you have inside the parent are automatically spaced end to end, and packed, is just based on your setting. So if you put in 4 pixels between items, it stays at 4 pixels, but space between makes sure they are automatically spaced. Strokes included was something new they added. So for example, if I decide to add stroke to this button, let's say a black stroke, I'm going to increase it just to make sure it's more visible. And I select the parent frame. What it has done, okay, let me, okay, I think you can see it more in the preview. So when the stroke is included in the layout, the frame includes the stroke. I don't know how best to explain this, but you can see that the broken line in the preview covers the entire button, including the stroke. But when you exclude it, it doesn't, it just takes the feel, not the stroke in it. Is what I'm saying making sense? Can just put a message on the chat. Just want to make sure I'm not stuck in jargons. For this part. So I want you to take a look at this preview, right? Take a look at this preview. When your stroke is included in the layout, look at the dotted lines, right? There's some dotted lines. It's taking the entire button, including the stroke. The stroke is the gray, the thick gray outline you can see, right? The reason why they introduced this was because initially they don't include the stroke. all it takes is the fill. So looking at the preview, you can see the dotted lines are just around the white box. It didn't include the gray outline or the gray stroke around it. Do you get it now? Anu, Johanna, Olamide. Johanna, Olamide, Orezi, do you understand what I'm saying now? Okay, perfect. And yeah, there is a last on top. Looking at the preview as well is quite explanatory. So when you have a stack of things around it or between each other, maybe I'll just show you to better explain this. So you have this so I have 3 circles and I create auto layout. So normally or previously, you can't have negative spacing between elements, right? All you can have was 0. But based on the new update, you can have negative spacing. And you can do this for, let's say you have a card and you're trying to show the number of people who have maybe purchased an item, for example, and these are their profile pictures, right? So let me just put in, looks like all my, okay. Insert for add-on photo. Yeah. So let's say these are the people that have purchased an item, for example. And you're like, no, I want this guy's picture.
Hello, good morning. Please,
Good
I can
morning.
barely understand or hear what you're saying. It seems like the network keeps having problem.
Is it breaking or
Yeah, I
Yes,
think
please.
it's a
Same
network.
here.
I think it's a network that
It's
is okay
breaking.
because it's. Oh,
is anybody having issues understanding me as well? So let's be sure it's maybe
I can
my
actually
network.
hear you from my end. I can hear you from my end. So
Okay, so that means it's your
Hello,
network.
can you hear
I
me?
can hear you as well.
I can, by the time you're done doing something on your screen, it's showing something entirely different because of the network. I think the network is having problems. Hello?
Yeah, it should be from your hand actually.
It's okay.
maybe you should try to rejoin the meeting. Probably leave and come back again. Maybe you should try that.
Okay, so thanks for that. Someone asked how the pictures to fill in the file. So you have to from the key, but I already have it. Yeah, user profile. I was just going to explain something that also layout button. So you can play around with the auto layout setting. It's quite find it's confusing. Say for example, I'm gonna call for now.
Fine, please, I can't even hear anything again. Hello?
So it wasn't my network
Yeah, he's
because
gone
I
for
had to
quite a
leave
while.
the meeting and rejoin, but I still wasn't hearing him.
I guess his network is actually bad. He's off now.
This
Is he on here? I can't hear anything anymore.
I
Network is
can't,
bad
I
now.
can't, I can't hear
Me
anything too.
neither. Me neither. I can't hear anything.
Ah, Mr. Tega, rather, please, we can't hear you. I just know that the cursor is
I
on the
don't think he's
screen.
on here. I don't think he's on here. Probably he wants to join again.
Okay.
Okay, so I was trying to explain something. So say for example we're on the iPhone 8 here, and I can see my button is too small in terms of width, and I want to increase this, right? So with the current setting we have, this is what happens, right? But how do I make it fluid? How do I make it such that I want the say for example, I always want this icon to be at the right hand, is it the right hand? Yeah. To always remain on this side each time I increase the width of this button. So what you can do is go into the children. So when you select a child in a parent element, you would see these new options, right? There's all content, there's fixed width, there's fill container. Fixed width means remain at the size I've put you, right? Don't change. All content means be flexible, right? So if I keep typing, keep increasing the width. And fill container means I'm not necessarily going to give you a width. In CSS, I'll call it a max width. So if the container increases, I want you to increase, right? So let me show you what I mean. So if I put fill container, you would see that the spacing or the width for this has increased, right? So right now, this is how long it is. But if I select this again and reduce it, you can see the width also reduces. So if I was to think about this in terms of how best to explain, you can say it works with percentages. So you can say always occupy maybe 40% of the spacing you have, irrespective of the size of the parent. Do you understand what I mean, or should I explain again?
Explain again.
Okay, perfect. Let me take a different approach. I have a few boxes. Right? I select them and I apply auto layout. All fine. So right now, the parent's frame is set to hug. Let's leave it that way for now. But if I increase this, say for example, I have a bigger screen and I want this to occupy the entire width. Right now, I need to go into them and maybe increase this manually, which is taking a lot of time. What I explained is this. When you go into the child element, you have three options. Right now is on fixed. They are all on fixed, right? But if I decide to change them to fill container, did you see what happened? It expanded, right? Because these two are on fixed and we have the parent frame occupying a full width. This is the parent frame. The parent frame is 318 pixels long or pixels wide. This is 65, 65, 65. But I want the elements inside to fill up the parent frame. I don't want this spacing there, right? So if I select this and change this to fill container, it automatically pushes the rest so that they fill up the parent frame, right? If I take this and change this from fixed to fill container, it changes as well. So what is this trying to do? Now that I've put three of them as fill container, they are occupying the same percentage of spacing within the parents. Is it still jargon?
No.
Okay, it's clear. Perfect. So the beauty of this is if I decide to add in more boxes, for example, because I've set this to fill container for the children, I can easily duplicate. I can see what happens. What happens is each new box takes an equal percentage in the parent container. They are separated equally, right? So if I delete one or more, they just keep adjusting themselves automatically. Perfect, right? So that's what I was trying to explain with this one. So that way, if I decide to increase this, because I've set this to fill container, it keeps taking a bigger percentage inside the parent, and that's because this is set to fixed. So this doesn't change in size. This keeps occupying, let's say, 10% because it's fixed. That is the size we gave it. It's not going to change. So this takes the higher percentage because it is fill container, right? But if for any reason I change this to fill, see what happens. So if you have an icon here, the icon becomes stretched. Do you understand up to that point? Are there questions up to this point? I would love you to ask questions. I don't want to go too far without you understanding this.
Okay, I have a question.
Okay?
Yeah, so there was a time I was okay. There was a time I was following a tutorial online. So it was about creating a button like this. So
Yeah.
after when I was about to include, so it was a sign up on Facebook button. So when I included the icon inside this, I made this there was a parent frame kind of. So when the Facebook icon was now inside the button, it was very difficult for me to adjust it. I was not able to use this I was not able to align it. It was very difficult for me to align. So I don't know how I can do that. Like when there was an icon inside, then it was the icon was supposed to be at the middle, kind of, so that it's going to be perfectly aligned. But it was very difficult for me to align it. So that's my question. Hello, Mr. Tega.
Okay, so you have an icon. Yeah, I was just trying to get an
Yeah.
icon into this. You have an
Okay, thank you,
icon
sir.
and you're trying to align the icon vertically middle. Is that your question? This is what you need for alignment, right? And I explained this before. This is what you need for alignment. It's pretty straightforward. I don't know if that was your question or is it something different?
Yeah, that's my question. I was thinking probably what you taught us is not applicable to icon with icons and all that.
No, it
I
says
get it.
the box I used there was just a placeholder for icons. You understand?
Okay, okay.
Yeah. So
Okay,
it's
sir.
pretty
Thank you
much the
very
same
much.
thing. You're welcome. Are there any other questions before I move forward? I would take silence as no questions. So yeah, I just had to explain this because the plugin for the profile picture is called user profile. I showed you user profile. So you can just install from the community, search for profile, something like that. Yep. Or avatars or something. Yep. So yeah, I had to explain auto layout first because then your buttons can become. Is there any fixed height for buttons? No, but just make sure your buttons are big enough for users to see and also interact with. So for me personally, I don't like going below 48, for example, for my buttons. So yeah, there is no standard size per se. Okay, so yeah. So you get my explanation about how to make a certain element fixed to one side using auto layout. So if this was a search bar, for example, this works perfectly. Yep.
No, I don't.
Can you come again?
To be
Someone
very
said something.
honest, every single thing you've done concerning auto layouts, I barely understand because network keeps on breaking. So I don't.
Okay, is this my network or is it your network? Because I think like other people are following. If others are not following, please let me know as well.
I left the meeting and I joined, and the same problem still persisted. So it's not my network.
Yeah, but if other people are don't seem to have the same issue, then it's also not my network. Is anyone experiencing the same issue?
It has gotten better with time. Like it has gotten better with time. I'm just trying to say that past, like the ones you were explaining initially, I didn't understand what you were saying. So I couldn't exactly follow with what you taught later on.
Okay, so what parts do you not understand? I can quickly run through it. If not, the recording will be available later, but yeah. What part did you not understand? I can run through quickly. Are you there?
To be very honest, I understand the basics of auto layout. So if there's anything specific that you added, that's what you should just talk about. I understand the basics of auto layout.
Okay, when you say basics, what exactly do you understand? Because basics can be relative.
How to use auto layouts when you're dealing with components. Like for instance, making a button here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I understand that. But the whole part about making the search bar stay on one side, or the parts where you were trying to like how do I put it? Put a certain length for the distance between try it now for free and then the search bar.
Okay, I'll just explain it again. But did you get the explanation I used for these boxes? Like this ones?
The boxes.
Yeah, this one, if you can see it. I explained some auto layout features using this as an example.
No, I didn't.
Okay, I would run through it very quickly again. So we have, I'm just gonna take this out of the auto layout. I have 3 boxes, yeah? And let me know if it starts breaking again so I don't go too far without you understanding. So I have these 3 boxes and I apply auto layout. And looking at it, I'm like, okay, this is an iPhone 8. I want it to span the entire width of the screen. So the normal thing to do is to do this, right? But then the boxes don't occupy the entire width. All I took was the parent frame, and now nothing is happening. I have this giant space here. And why is it this way? If I click into the child, right, I can see that the width is fixed. Look at the other child as well. The width is fixed. This child as well, the width is fixed, right? If I decide to change this to fill container, what it does is it occupies a certain percentage of the screen or of the width of the parent container. So if this is, say, currently it is 54px in width, this is 54px in width, that is 108px in total. Let's assume 108px is like 10% or 15% of this entire width. If I change this to fill container, what it does is it occupies the remaining 85% that is left. So I'm assuming these two are occupying 15% because it's fixed, right? So if I change this from fixed to fill, this is what happens. Do you understand up to this point? I
Yes, I
think
do.
that was okay, perfect. If I change either of this to fill, it does the same thing. So this is occupying, say 85%, this is occupying 15, which is like 7.5%, 7.5%. If I change this to fill, this is what happens, right? So it's the same thing I'm trying to explain here. Taking a look at this, if I change this to fixed, in fact, it does something totally different. But changing it to fill is telling it, okay, this is occupying maybe 5% of this of the total width, and you are currently fixed. But I want this to remain at the right hand side. Just stay where you are, don't move. Right? So I change this to fill. So it occupies whatever width I want, right? So that's why I'm using percentages, not absolute number. So it's occupying a certain percentage of the parent frame. So if I click into this, you can see it's full. Like the entire width is full. But you don't see it because you have to click in first. So this means I can keep typing, right? And it wouldn't affect this one compared to if it was fixed initially. So if I change this to fixed, it begins to break, but this is because we already applied hog on the vertical direction. If it was on fixed height, the text wouldn't go down. Come on, why are you doing this to me? Can you see? It goes outside of the bounding box. Are you following up to this point?
Yes, but if it was hard, it will keep on creating much more space for it to still be within the
Exactly.
components. I understand.
Okay. Exactly. So I haven't done anything different. All I tried to explain was, the fill container and fixed it. That's it.
Okay, thank you. I understand.
Okay, perfect. So let's create instances for the buttons. I changed my button into a search bar, but yeah, let's leave it that way. So let's take a button, create a button. Let's just call our button read more. I apply my auto layout, Shift A. Sorry, there's a question. What other instances do we use auto layout aside from button? You can use auto layout in almost everything. You can use it for your input fields. You can use it for your card layouts. I literally apply auto layouts almost everywhere, right? Because it makes your design more responsive, I would say. So there are various instances where you can use auto layouts, but because today we're focused on icons and buttons, that's the reason why I'm explaining auto layout and buttons. But it's pretty much the same concept. If you want something to occupy a certain percentage of the parent element, you use fill layouts. If you want it to remain fixed in size, use fixed. If you want it to keep increasing and adjusting itself based on content, you use hog content. The major difference is just make sure, so if you're selecting the parent frame, what you see over here, you wouldn't see it when you select the child frame. So you might be like, where did he put this thing? Where can I find it? It's like maybe you're looking for something like this. And you're like, where can I find it? But you're into the child elements, you won't find it. So you'd have to be careful over there. Make sure you're looking at the right, you're clicking the right elements. Is it the child? Is it the parents? The parents have more control over the child, and the child itself has some features or some control in itself. But everything the child does is based on the parents. Let me show you a quick example, which is not part of buttons, but yeah. Let me this one I'm trying to say, because right now this is just a parent and a child. What if there's like a grandparent? If there's anything like that. So if I put this in a frame, and so right now this is like a child, yeah, a parent, and let's call it a grandparent. I don't know what it's called in development. And I decide to apply auto layout to this frame. Sorry. So right now I've applied auto layout. What would you notice? When I click on this, I have this section, but coming into this, sorry, coming into this, you will still find the section because this is also housing something. So what am I trying to point out here? It's always the last one, the very last child or the last descendant that wouldn't have that section. If I say, for example, okay, I want to increase this to this width. I don't want to keep doing this manually. Like I want this to, come on, Figma. I want this to increase while I increase this width. What do you think I need to do? Do you get my question? So my question is, currently it's like this, and I want to increase the width of this to this, but I don't want to go into this manually to increase it all the time. I want it to automatically flow as I increase the width of this. What do you think I need to do? It's a quick question for everyone. So for me says use fill container. Does anyone has any other ideas? Come on, guys, let's make it interactive. And that says fill container on the text. Olamide says change the alignment. Okay. Agu says, well, I would say Agu, and you have to make the frame a child, then create a new parent. The search box, change it to fill container. Okay. I would like to ask first, Olumide, what you mean by change the alignment? I just want to see if you guys understand this thing, because I don't want to go too far without, explaining properly. So Olumide, if you can mute yourself, just let me know what you think, like, about changing the alignments. And also, sorry, just before you talk, Ernest, you also let me know why you think I need to change the text to fill container. So Olumide, let's go.
All right. So I maybe if you put it maybe the alignment on the right, because currently when you click on the frame, it's still showing left. So I just thought if it was on the right, yeah, it's still showing upper left, kind of, yeah.
So I click it like this,
Yep.
and let's see if it works.
Oops. Okay, it takes everything to the
right.
To the right.
Okay, perfect. Okay, nice. Yeah, there are situations where you can use that, but yeah, so that wasn't correct. But I just wanted to know your thought process behind choosing that answer. You get me?
Yeah.
Who did I say was next? Ernest. So why do you think I need to change the text to fill container? Because based on what we've done, the text is already fill container.
What I think the first thing to do is the frame 5, we increase the width.
Okay.
Then we click on the try the test.
Okay.
Test, then make it a fixed container.
A fixed Fixed?
Yeah, yeah, that try it now for free is currently on fixed.
No, it's currently on fill.
The which you expand on this.
So you
Oh,
want me to change it to fixed?
uh, it didn't
I
work.
understand. I understand. It can get it takes some time to understand it, but yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to know like you guys' thought process behind it to ensure you're following. But some people have given the right answer. So like Agu, Tofumi, Kevin, um, Benedict's answer, you'd have to make the frame a child, then create a new parent. No, that's not the way to go about it. It's very simple. All you have to do is change this from fixed to fill, and that's it, right? So if we do this, this is what happens, right? If I decide to draw another frame outside of this, sorry, I'm dwelling too much on auto layouts. I just know it can get a bit confusing sometimes. And if you don't understand like these things, it becomes so annoying. So this is a frame. This is still, so one thing you should know about Figma is, let me, what am I doing? Sorry. I think I stopped sharing by mistake. I believe you can see my screen now. Yep. Where is the chat? Okay, perfect. So if I decide to draw a frame around this, and let me give it maybe green, for example, Alt VH, quick alignment. That was Alt VH to just quickly align it like the center. Alt V and H. So if I can do the same thing here, right? So now we have how many levels? We have the parents, we have the, let me call this grandparents, and we have this one, we'll call it the great grandparents, right? And I want to do the same thing we've done before. I want the white box, right? Let me just make it a bit pretty. I want the white box to increase while I increase this green one. What do I do this time?
You make the parents fixed, you make the grandparents the field container.
Okay. I agree with you latter, not the former. So you don't need to make the parent fixed. All you do is change the grandparent from fixed. What? Okay, yeah, you're not gonna see the option. Sorry for shouting. You're not gonna see the option for fill because I haven't applied auto layout. So you'd have to watch that. You need to apply auto layout first, then you'll be able to see the option for fill. Are we following?
Done.
What?
Could you come again when you were talking about the field container? Oh, sorry, the field you just
Yeah.
spoke about.
So what we're trying to do is make sure the white box gets extended as I increase this. But the option or the answer is to change this from fixed to fill. But I can't find fill because I haven't applied auto layout to the great grandparents. So once you apply auto layout, go back into the grandparent, you would see fill container, and that's what you need to do. And voila, it works. Perfect. Nice. Let's go back into buttons. Yep. So I'm just going to import some icons real quick. Ctrl-Alt-P to run the last plugin you used. Let me just go into the collection and yeah, just pick one. Perfect. That should do. They all came into the auto layout. So yeah, let's create a button, guys. I'm just gonna give it some padding and some margin, not margin, just some padding inside. And align center. I'm just gonna give it a feel. Let's use this. So what I want to do is, let me put an icon into the auto layout. Why isn't this going inside? Yep. So Figma recently released something called component properties. And what component properties does is it allows you, how do I explain this? Nah, forget. I'm just going to show you what it does. Component properties, it allows you create like instance swapping. So let me create a component from the button, right? If I go into the text layer, which is this read more, you would notice this little icon, right? This is a component property. The same thing goes for this. You see content, and you can see the text we have inside of it, read more. If I click on this, it says create a component property. I can say this is button text, just giving it a name. And the default value is read more. You can put in anything. Create property. We have a property now. You would understand why in a second. The same thing goes for this. I mean, anywhere you see the sign, it means you can create a component property. So this is for a Boolean, right? So we can call this icon right, because you can have icon on the left as well. And the default value you can set to true or false, because Boolean is either true or false, 1 or 0, yes or no, something like that. Create property. And this one as well is called instance swap, meaning you want to be able to swap an instance or just swap this particular icon for something else, right? So you can call this right icon, something like that. We can use a better name later on. And you can also put a default value. So now you can see the icons that I imported. And because they are all components, they show up here. So one thing you should know is if the icons are not components already, you won't find them listed down here, right? So create property. What does this mean for us? It means that if I want to edit this text, I don't need to go into the text first, double click and type. Who is shouting, help me, help me? Am I carrying it to where you don't know?
We are lost.
Okay. I would go back to it, but let me just finish explaining this. So this means that if I click on a button, I automatically have these options and I've not created a variance yet. Right? So I can decide to turn on and off the icon. I can decide to change the button text for read more to maybe click me. Right? And I can decide to change the icon. The difference between this and the previous version is that normally I would have done, if I was to do this exact thing I've just done, I would have to have a component like this, another component like this, like detach it first, one without icon, then yeah, let me just do this. I know this is bad, but yeah, I would explain better. I would have to do this, create a component for this, and then I would, create a variant, and then I'll call this, I don't know what I'm supposed to call this, but yeah, I can create a property saying this as an icon. Sorry, I can call this property, let's say icon equals true. And for this, I would say icon equals false. I'm gonna answer your questions. So this means if I have this, then I have this button, this toggle. Do you understand? So instead of doing this, all I did was one thing, which was using the instance property or component property. All I did was this, and I already have this applied. So it saves you from creating multiple variants. So you have like a variant with icon, a variant without icon, a variant with icon on the left, a variant without icon on the left. This just saves you the ton of variants you'd have to create, right? So for those that are lost, let me do it again. First thing I talked about, not necessarily the first thing, but yeah. Your icons or whatever you want to use for swapping has to be a component, right? And then when creating your button, so try me now, I apply auto layout. I put in a fill, right? Put in my margin, my padding, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then I put in an icon. By the way, Figma has absolute positioning. Absolute positioning, sorry for diverting. It's just so for example, this has shifted my design, but I don't want it like this. I just want it maybe maybe somewhere on top here. I can't do that. All I have to do is click on this little absolute position, everything adjusts, and I can move this as I love to, or I want to, right? I just wanted to chip that in, but yeah. Anyways, so I take my stuff and do my alignments. Yeah. And all I have to do is create a component because it's called components properties. So if you don't create a component, you wouldn't find the options I told you about. So now we have a good button. When you go into the text, you would see the option. So layer option is basically, do you want to turn it off? Do you want to turn it off? Apply Boolean property, right? And if you scroll down, because it's a text, they added content. This wasn't in Figma before. They added content and you can apply a text property to it. Do you understand up to this point, or I'm still taking you to where you don't know? Okay, one person understands.
I understand.
Okay, so if I decide to apply a text property, all I need to do is give it a name. What do I want to call my text property? I can say button content or button label or something like that. And I can give it a default value. Try it now, click me, blah, 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 right? And then I create a property. It has created it for me, right? I can say, okay, I don't want a button with text. I want just icon only, right? So that means I want to apply a Boolean property for my text. So I can come here and call it show text. By default is true. That means always show it. By the other option is false. Don't show it. Create property, right? I can do the same for the icon. I can say, okay, maybe in the future I would like to swap this icon for this one or this one or this one. I'd have to create an instance swap property. Olivia, where did you get lost exactly, or what exactly do you not understand? You can unmute yourself.
Okay. I understood the parts where you created try me now, made
Mm-hmm.
auto layout, turned it yellow,
Mm-hmm.
added the icon,
Mm-hmm.
properly aligned it on the auto layout part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Then I created a component.
that's where what you did.
That's it. I turned the auto layout into a component. That's
How
what I
did you
did.
do that?
Oh,
What?
that was what I was about asking too.
How did you do that?
Oh, it's just Control Alt K, or just come here and yeah, it's a component. I just assumed you'll know how to create components. Do you understand?
Okay, yeah, you highlighted the entire thing and clicked Control Alt K. All right.
Yep. Control Alt K. It's just a shortcut, but you can always just come to this 4 diamonds on top and create a component, or right click and create a component. You can see the shortcuts, Control Alt K. Okay.
So how did you now change that stuff to button text and that value and all that razzle dazzle?
Okay, let me go back. So we're back to this point. Align, create a component. Now, because it's a component, I'm trying to explain the idea behind component properties, right? So if I click into the text, I see this icon. This says apply Boolean property. So true or false, hide or show, 1 or 0, yes or no, right? And I might think about it like, okay, maybe I would need a button that doesn't have a text, just icon. So I need this. So I click on it and I can call it show text, like a question, because I might not be the only one using this design file, right? I can go into the content, right? This also has the icon, and I can call this button text or button label or something like that. Great. I can't see the option anywhere else, so we're good. Of course, you don't have to use it all the time, but yeah. And if I click into this one, because this is a child of a component, remember I mentioned your icons have to be components. You have this option. So I can call this icon, right? Because I can also have icon on the left-hand side of the button. And you can see that because those icons outside are components, I also get the options here to choose a default value. right? But I'll leave it this way and just create a property. The same thing goes, I can decide that I want my button to have just text, no icon. So it makes sense to apply the Boolean property. So I can create a new one, which is show icon, maybe right, for example, and create, no other options. So what this does for us is once I create an instance of this, I automatically get all these options, right? Do I want text? Nope. Or yes. Do I want to change the button label to maybe view analytics? It automatically changes it. So this means I don't have to click into the text all the time. Like, for example, you can have different layers of layers and you have to like double click, double click, double click, double click, double click to get to the text, or hold control and do this first. All you need to do is select the parents, come here, change the text. The same thing goes for the icon. I don't need to go into the icon first to change it. I can just come here from the drop down and change what I want to change. Do I want to show the icon? Yes or no? It works. Does that mean we have to create a component for the icons before we can use them interchangeably? Yep. You have to make all your icons components. If not, this wouldn't work. So a typical example. So if I decide to maybe detach this two, can I detach it? No, I can't. You can't detach a parent component. Okay, let me delete them and detach these ones. Let me see. So you can see they no longer show, right? So they have to be components for them to show up here. Is that clear, Pelumi?
Yeah, you basically made variations of the components so that you could use them at different points.
Yeah. Or you can have an icon pack that are already components like Matthew. It's all up to you. You can have an icon pack, but they have to be in your design file. Right? So yeah, that saves you a shit ton of you know, variants. But of course, to create variants is pretty much the same way. So for example, you can do like hover states and default states and primary states and all those, not primary states, sorry, focus states. So we can take this as our primary button. Let's call this the primary button. Oh, we're beginning to run out of time. Let's call this primary. Call this primary. I will create one for secondary. Yep. By the way, that was Shift X. Just swap the fill and outline color together. Secondary. Yeah, you can have those buttons as well. Okay, let me just do that. Let's just call this ghost or toucher or something. Okay, and then we can have different states. So we can call this default states. I would create an hover state and also a, yeah, just for the class, maybe disabled states, for example. Right? So for the hover states, we can decide to, by the way, I'm detaching the, because you know when I drag this, it created an instance. Can you hear me? Someone says you can't hear me. I mean, Isaac says you can't hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So I just said that because this is a master component or parent component, it creates an instance, but a lot of times I like to detach it, because if I don't detach it, any change I make to this one would affect this one. So yeah, it's just a meeting. Maybe people have like other methods of doing it, but yeah. So on over, I can make it maybe darker. Yeah, this is bad, but yeah, let's leave it that way. And disabled, I can make it from this to this and change this from black to, yeah, I think this works. Sorry. Gray to, yeah, maybe something like this. But yeah, always watch out for your contrasts. Make sure it's accessible. So make sure your text is legible and easily readable. And one way you can easily find this out, sorry for diverting again, is you can use a plugin called Stack. No, I think I prefer Zebra. Was that a sigh of now? Wow. Or what was that sigh? So select both. I think this guy is okay. I'll just use Stack for now. But wait, let me see. Yeah, Zebra. Run. What Zebra does is it lets you know if your colors are accessible or not. So currently it's 3 and 56 for APCA. And it's saying this is the level you're at. And you'd have to read like all this text. But Stack at the other end will just show you. They've changed a bit. Yeah, so Stack lets you know, okay, it passes for AA, it passes for AAA, normal text, large text, it also passes. So this is a way to know if your colors are accessible or not. So if I change this to maybe from yellow to something like this, yeah, which is obviously bad, but yeah. Ctrl-Alt-P to run your last plugin. So you can see it fails. It lets you know that the colors are not accessible. So this is called Stack. The other one is called Zebra. Zebra is just more, I don't know, they've made an update to Stack. It wasn't like this before. So maybe they've applied the new guidelines for contrast. I'm not sure. I'd have to find that out. But yeah, you can install both and see what works. So yeah, back to buttons. Let's create the overstate for this one. What can we use for overstates? Let me see. I think I'll just use this color as well. And for this one, we can just put in maybe a lighter yellow. By the way, take your time to select colors. I'm just doing this because we're out of time. We're running out of time. And I want to leave room for questions. Yeah, and the same thing goes for this one. So yeah, we've created all the states. So you select these guys, make them components. This is already a component, so just create multiple components. And then you can select this one as well and combine them into variants. Right? Perfect. So what we have to do now is check the properties. This is property 1. but we don't want it to be called property 1. We'd call it, what do we call it? I'm looking for a name. Let's call it, let's say type and primary. Nope. How do I add new components? Figma's changed something. Not new components, new property. Let's call this secondary. There is something different. Ghosts. Or, 1 second, something seems to have changed. This is the name, the values. Or could it be, create, not a new variant. I want to create a new property. Sorry guys, trying to figure this out. So what I'm trying to do is I want to have a property for the type, primary, secondary, ghost. Then I want to have another property for the states. So default, over, and disabled. But for some reason, wait, let me see this. Let me try something. The value is default. Okay. 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 Secondary default. Okay. Makes sense. Let me see. State of over, type of primary. Secondary and state of over. Are you guys still with me? Yeah, ghosts and over. And this is primary, disabled. This is secondary, disabled. And this is ghosts, disabled. Okay, I think that should work. So just call this buttons. And if I take this and create an instance, yep, perfect. Yep, it works. Default over disabled makes sense. 1 second. What I'm trying to see now is where because I haven't created this with written variants that includes property. So I'm trying to see how I can also access those components properties we had before. I find this a bit strange. It's all showing here, but it's not showing the instance. Super strange. Come on, where are you? Figma. Let me see something. Could it be I need to do it again? No. Okay. Okay, I see what's happening. Okay.
You have to
I have
double
to do
click
it
on
for
it.
each of them. There should be a good way to target this. So yeah, because I didn't create it for the other buttons, I have to do that. They're all button text, so it should apply. Then the same thing goes for the icons. Yep. Then I apply the property as well. This icon right and this show icon right. I don't think I applied the boolean for this guys. Yep. I said Figma sharing breakfast. No, it's just that I've not created a design system using the component properties and also variants together because this was recently released. And the design system I have didn't include the component properties. So yeah, we are all learning on this one. So show text, yes. So hopefully this works now. Whoops, it works. So now we get all the thingies, the component properties. Yeah. Is anyone lost or should I explain again?
Please,
Please explain again.
please explain.
Again. Okay, where do you want me to explain from? Like what part? More than lost. Yeah, I understand because I was also trying to
Yeah,
figure something
spoken in the
out.
Milky Way. I don't understand what variants are, to be very honest. But go on.
Do you understand? Okay, guys, do you understand how I created the other disabled states? Just choosing the right colors, not necessarily because I use bad colors here, but yeah, you understand how I created the different states for the different types, primary, secondary ghosts, and default over disabled. Do you understand up to that point?
Yeah, I understand the basics of components because when you create the components, that means you will not be able to like change the option types. So the types of the components. But I just want to ask, what in the world is variance?
These are variants. Variants are just variations of something. I think that's the easiest way to explain it. They are variations of something. So, for example, if you want to send a finger emoji, when you tap on the finger, it shows you different variants, different skin tones. Those skin
Tones.
tones are
Okay.
variants, right? So that's what we're trying to do here because on your website, you have different types of buttons. You have the buttons that has a solid feel, you have buttons that are just stroke, you have buttons that don't have any feel or stroke on them. That was why I created primary, secondary ghosts. And at the same time, when you hover over a button, it gives a little effect, right? It gives a little effect. Some depends on what is on the website. When you hover over a button, sometimes some things jump, sometimes the color changes, or some kind of animation applies, right? But we decided to keep it simple. So I did the hover state for the 3 types of buttons and also a disabled state. And after doing that, I selected each of them and created a component, right? And when you have a selection of components, it's Figma asks you, do you want to combine them as variants? Let me show you. So you have a selection of components. I'm just going to copy all of this again so I can show you guys from the start. right? Control Alt B to detach. And right now, these are not components. So Control Alt K creates a component. Sorry, that creates one huge component. So the best thing is to come into here and create a component set, or you can create multiple components first, then combine as variants, or just create a component set. It's basically the same thing. Do you understand up to this point? I would answer a question, me just a second. Do you understand up to this point, Olivia and the rest?
Yeah, it's a variant component, all from one
And
variant.
So we have to define it, because right now it says property 1 is default, and we have conflicting variants, right? So we need to go into each of the button and define what is what, right? And that's what I was trying to do here with the type and state, right? So you have to go into this and say, okay, you can double click on this and say, I want this to be the type. And we have 3 different types: primary, secondary, and ghost. So primary, right? It creates that for me. I click on the secondary button. I change this to secondary. Why is it disappearing? I click on the ghost button and I change this to ghost, right? But the problem I had was, okay, how do I create another property that specifies the state, default, over, and disabled? That's what I was trying to figure out the other time. So what you have to do, Figma has changed it, because initially all you have to do is click on the plus button here and create a new property. But you have to click on the parent, click on plus, click on variant, and what you want to call this property, I want to call it the button state, right? And by default, I want the name to be default. So default, yeah. So create property. Now we have a new property called state. So go back into the child or the parent, because this is like based on our analogy. This is like the grandparent, this is the parent, and the contents are the children. So go back into the parent. This is default, but the type is not default because it's a primary button. We change it to what's primary. And we change the state to other state, right? We do the same thing for this. We change the type from default to secondary and the state to other. The same thing for this. We change it to ghost and the state to other. We do the same thing for the last one. The type is primary. The state is disabled, but we don't have disabled. So we can add new disabled. Change this from type, from default to, what is it again? Primary. The state to disabled. And
No,
this
that
is,
one is secondary. Isn't it secondary?
which one? This one? Yeah. Secondary, disabled.
It's secondary.
Primary,
Yeah.
disabled, ghost, secondary, yep. Thanks for pointing that out. Ghost over, secondary over, primary default, secondary default, ghost default. Do you understand up to this point?
Yes.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank
Perfect.
you.
So now we have to create the component property, right? So because I detached the buttons from, we created it for this already, but because I copied all of this and detached it, that means the components properties are no longer there. So we have to create the components properties, right? So what I would do is select the text, and then I think there should be an option to target all types of text. I can't find it. Yeah, so just select all the text. Strange. But yeah, select all the text. And then, do you want to have a button where you have just icons and no text? If yes, apply a Boolean property and give it a name everyone understands. Show text. Great. Is there a point in your design where you have to change the content of the button? I mean the text itself? If yes, create, right? So call this button text. And of course, you can change the default value from try me now to something different. It doesn't matter. Fine, no other option to create a component property. So we select the icons, right? Select the icons. And like I mentioned, make sure your icons are what components. If not, they don't show up. Chinaya, I'll come to you in a second. So, do you want to point in your design where you want just icon buttons and no text? If yes, apply Boolean property. Yep. So show icon. Since we don't have left icon, we just say show icon, right? So do you want to change the icon at any point in your design? If yes, apply instance swap. So change icon, and then you see the icons you have available in your file. Create property. Is there any other thing we can do here? Nothing. So we've created the components properties, we've created variants. So that means if I create an instance by holding Alt and dragging out of the variant, I should see all of these options over here, right? I should be able to change the button type. I should be able to change the state. I should be able to hide the text. I should be able to change the text. I should be able to hide the icon if I want to. I should be able to, change whatever I need to change inside. Do we understand?
Yes, I understand.
Perfect. So let me look at the questions in the chat. When you create cards and the rest, do we need to use auto layout on them? I will absolutely advise that. If you want to change the icons and some of the button color, do you need to detach and make the changes on the child? No, you don't have to detach, but I wouldn't advise changing the button color if it's not in your variant. So for example, you can decide to have maybe delete. Delete is always red. You can say you want to have a delete property. I mean a delete variant. So you can add a new variant and just change this from yellow to red, and then you call this delete or something like that. Right? And for this, I need to go into the design so you can say delete. And you can see because I already applied text property, anything I change here affects the rest, right? So in this case, just leave it as try me now and just create the other ones. So Shift X to swap the thingy, outline and fill. And for this, just get rid of the stroke. So now we have to create a state. Is it a state? It's not a state, it's more of a type. So primary, secondary, over, primary, secondary, ghosts. Let's just call it a state for now, but yeah. But yeah, you should always name your things properly. I'm just doing this for example purposes. So yep, call this delete, and I will change this to red. So this way, if I want a delete button, all I have to do is select my instance, change the state to delete, and then change the, maybe I don't want an icon. And of course, you can always work on the alignment. I've not done this, so I don't want to waste time, because normally when you change you can move the icon, you don't want depends on your kind of design anyways. You might not want the button to adjust in size. You might want it to remain this same size, right? Because right now it's changes, but it's all up to the design. And you can just call this delete, and you might want the text to be white. So I don't have white. I just put in white. So yeah, so you don't need to detach the child before making any kind of changes. Of course, you can also just decide not to create this variant and just change the color. You can do that if you want to, but yeah, but I would say for deletes, yeah, you can create a variant. You can choose not to. I just wanted to show an example of it. So looking at the questions, it's been the most interesting class so far, but also confusing. Yeah, the video would be uploaded on YouTube. Just take your time to understand auto layouts and variants and components property. Auto layout wasn't part of this class, but I use auto layouts in my buttons. That's why I had to explain it like at the beginning, so you have a proper understanding. Booleans are simple. Class is going on smoothly. I'm a bit confused. Okay, Chineye, where exactly are you confused? NS, this is not simple at all. Trust me, it's simple. All you need is practice.
Sorry, I got confused in that variance area when you were explaining to Olivia, and that was where I stopped. After that, I don't think I understood anything that you've been saying since.
Okay, we have 5 more minutes. To what point do you understand? And if there's anyone that doesn't understand anything, just put a question in the chat and I'll try to cover it as fast as I can.
I understood every other thing except for the variance and the change property stuff that you just did now. That was a bit confusing for me.
Okay, so but do you understand why we need all these types of buttons?
I don't.
Okay, let me show you something. 1 second. I'm going to share my screen. Mm, mm, mm. Share screen. Where are you? Web browser. Not this browser. Can you see my browser?
Yes, I can.
You can see U lesson, right? Can you see the website I'm showing you?
Mm,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. Yeah. So these are buttons. So watch what happens when I hover on this button. Can you see the subtle change? It becomes bigger a bit.
Yeah.
When I hover over this ghost button, what happens? it changes from the dull color to a white color. This is the hover state. This is the default state, right?
Oh, yeah.
The same thing goes for, this is their theme. If I was to go to a different website, maybe let me see. I think Stripe's website. Okay. So can you see default, it's white, but once I hover, it becomes a bit off-white, right?
Yeah.
The same thing goes for this. It becomes brighter on hover, and the arrow changes from a chevron to a proper arrow, right? So this would be your default state in Figma. Then you create another state that shows hover, which is a brighter white with a full arrow. That's why we create different types of buttons in Figma. So let me go back to Figma. So yeah, you understand why I have like a default state, an hover state. So once the mouse enters into this button, it becomes darker, right? And if the button is not clickable, it has this gray background behind it. That was the reason, or that is the reason for having different types of states. And as you saw, also we have different types of buttons. There were buttons with just like a few. There were buttons that were just like text, which is this one. This one. And when we hover it, it changed color. But for us, we're like, no, let's give it a background when we hover. Is that clear up to this point?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Yeah. So after creating these different types, I made them components and then combine them as a variant, right? So once you select some components, these are components, you get this option to combine as variants. So once you combine as variants, you get this little border around, right? And clicking on this, you can add new properties if you want to. So ignore this last four for now, but you can click on this, create variants, and type in a new property you want to type into. So the next thing we did after that was to specify what each button was. So I created a type property, I created a state property just by clicking on this and clicking plus and variant, right? So I clicked on this, I'm like, oh, the type is primary. I typed in primary, and you can always add in new values. I clicked on this, the type is secondary, I typed in secondary, and the same thing goes for the state as well. So I did that for all the buttons. Do you understand? Was it Ernest? Silence means you understand, I suppose. So after doing all of that, because they are all components, I could easily select the text. I selected all the text, and then I applied layer property, a Boolean property, which is show text true or false, a content property, which changes the text inside of the button. And then I selected all the icons, and I put in an instance swap property, a Boolean property as well. That was all I did. But if you still don't understand, the video would be uploaded, and if it's still not explanatory, you can also check some tutorials on YouTube, which would be explanatory, hopefully. And when you don't want the button sizes to change, do you like fixed sizes? Do you use like fixed sizes in the components? I would have to check that out, because now I'm using the what's it called? I'm using the component properties. I'm using components properties for the icons, and the icons are the ones that really, determine how the height and width of the button is. And I haven't used that because it was recently released, but I would check it out, and if I'm able to find a way around it, I would do a short recording and I'll send it to the Slack group. Is that fine? Agu
For
Kilichi.
what?
What?
Like send a recording for what? What couldn't you do?
Someone asked a question. So right now, when you click on this button, right, and I click on show icon, it becomes bigger in size, right, and bigger in size in general. But there could be situations where you want the size of the button to remain the same, whether there's an icon or not, right? So if I was to do this using the regular variance method without components property, it would look something like this. So Ernest, try to follow along. So I have one button with icon, one button without the icon. But then I can also decide to make this fixed. So this is currently 97 by 56. I can drag it out, 97, 56, and place this in the center. And then create a component set, right? Or create multiple components, combine as variants. So I can click into this, and the property, I want to call it show icon. And for this, do I want to show icon, yes or no? Yes. And for this, no. So if I take an instance, this is what happens, right? The size of the button remains the same, although there's a little change. This is 98. Okay, take this down to 97. So now you shouldn't notice that movement, just the text, moving to the center, but that's it. So you might want something like this, but right now we can't achieve that. So the question was, how can I do this using these properties? How can I keep the button at the same size at both width and height? So I said, if I'm able to find a way around it, I would make a short recording and I'll send it to the group. All good? Perfect. Can you get my social? Yeah, we'll put that in the chat. But yeah, are there any more questions? We have 6 minutes out of time. Are there any more questions that I can answer right now? If not, I can just
Question,
try
just
to.
a request.
Okay.
Please let this video be uploaded as soon as possible, please.
No problem.
Yeah.
Design Power would take care of that. There was attendance. Design Power put in a link in the chat. So if you scroll up, you would see it at 12:20 p.m. There's a form. I think you need to click on that to fill it. So yeah, thanks for today, guys. It was also a learning experience for me as well.
Thank you. And thank you for keep on how do I put it now? Thank you for all the times that you kept on like going back to the teachers. Thank you.
No, it's okay. You're welcome. Thanks a
Thank
bunch.
you.
Yeah, so I guess I will see you guys when next I see you. All right, guys, enjoy your weekend and
Bye.
have a
Bye.
great day. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for your call.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kung gagawin ka